This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
Introduction. Can you imagine our life without television? Modern technologies allow people to watch programs and shows with the help of many devices, and it is rather difficult to imagine the day without watching TV or using it as background noise while being involved in other activities. Today, a lot of people spend their spare time sitting in front of screens and watching many programs that are really not necessary to watch because they do not include any helpful information. Furthermore, they can have even harmful effects on the public's consciousness. Television is one of the most influential aspects of modern life because it is actively used to influence people's attitudes to this or that situation or phenomenon, and many people become the victims of the television impact. Thus, television has adverse effects on society because it influences the individual's psychological state and mental abilities, emotions and feelings, attitudes and vision of moral values, and the capacities to make independent decisions and effective choices. Whom does television affect? There are few people who do not feel the impact of television on their lives because even when the public is not interested in programs and shows, commercials seem to follow us in all aspects of life, affecting our tendencies and fashion and influencing our choices every day. Television affects all age categories of people. Nevertheless, the impact of television on children is the most dangerous because children have no ability to assess the information presented in TV programs and shows critically. Many parents are inclined to use television to attract their children's attention and entertain them without concentrating on the fact that the impact of television on the children's brains and emotional state can be harmful. Moreover, today, it is possible to notice a lot of toddlers who spend their time in front of the screen without their parents' control. Thus, the impact of television on children is quite a controversial question. However, adults also feel the significant impact of television on their lives because there are tendencies to watch TV while having a rest, eating, communicating with friends, and completing different everyday activities. That is why it is necessary to mention that television affects the majority of people without referencing their age and even without focusing on their social status. Television is now the most available way of entertaining and getting information. How does television affect the public? What is the difference between the negative impact of television on children and adults? Today, many researchers and doctors pay attention to the fact that children are more influenced by the information presented in TV programs because of their limited possibility to distinguish between fantasy and reality. The most problematic issue is the impact of violence depicted in TV shows on the children's minds and psychological state. Children perceive the violent actions presented in TV programs as accurate, and they can consider them as possible to follow. Thus, television can change the peculiarities of children's perception of moral values and definite virtues. Violence in TV shows and cartoons can provoke children's brutal actions and conflicts in their relations with friends and classmates in reality because children are inclined to reflect those behavioral patterns that they observe. Moreover, not only the character of information can be influential for children. Spending many hours in front of the TV screens can affect the children's performance at school and their classroom engagement because the habit of watching TV provokes children's passive lack of interest in school activities and reduces their concentration of attention. The impact of television on adults and their emotional state can also be harmful. Focusing on the character of the information presented in TV news and shows, it is possible to note that people receive a lot of information every day, which stimulates their adverse reactions, different types of emotional downs, apathy, and pessimism. Commercials that are used on television can have a lot of adverse effects on adults. Those people who are influenced by commercials are inclined to buy a lot of unnecessary products. They also can feel dissatisfied because of the impossibility of following all the tendencies and buying all the products promoted with the help of commercials. However, Many people use television to entertain themselves. In this case, TV shows and entertaining programs make people passive and contribute to developing the habits of a sedentary lifestyle. The family tradition of watching TV in the evening can be discussed as good only when the process is not passive, the choice of a program is relevant, and the members of the family have the opportunity to discuss it. That is why it is also essential to concentrate on the negative impact of television on people's health, especially on their eyes, which are affected by the usage of different technological devices. Suggestions for reducing the time spent in front of screens. To reduce the adverse effects of television on society, it is necessary to cut the time that people spend in front of their TV screens. The practice of limiting watching TV is important for children who should watch TV programs less than 2 hours a day, and it is more advantageous not to watch TV during the weekdays and reduce all the screen-based activities that are harmful to children's health. Children reflect the behaviors of their parents. That is why adults should also have a special schedule for watching TV, choosing mainly programs about nature, history, or science. The negative impact of television can be effectively reduced when people do not watch TV while eating and communicating. Moreover, having TV sets in bedrooms is also a harmful practice. The habit of watching TV in order to spend spare time can be successfully changed with the habit of walking with friends and children. Conclusion. Thus, television can influence our attitude to life, our choices, and our decisions without our awareness of the facts. People can react to the information presented in TV news and TV shows consciously as well as unconsciously. That is why it is almost impossible to predict the effects of television on our next actions and behaviors or our emotional state. The impact of television on people's minds and health is often negative because of the lack of control over the time spent in front of the screens and the choice of programs and shows. Nevertheless, it can be reduced by decreasing the role of television in people's everyday lives. If you want to find more works like this essay on television effects on society, head over to ivypanda.com. It has a collection of samples with thousands of submissions covering virtually all academic subjects.